There are so many great tools and features that we have to help you build your generative AI apps, but how do you know that they're going to be right for you and perform the way that you want? You have to evaluate, evaluate, and evaluate again. And here, today, we're going to be talking all about evaluation. So my name is Jesse Manders. I'm one of the product managers here on Amazon Bedrock, and I'll be joined on stage by my colleagues, Shailendra and Hardik, who will be walking you through these demos. Today, we're going to be talking all about how to streamline your RAG evaluation and model evaluation on Amazon Bedrock. In more detail, here's our agenda. So challenges with evaluation, why it's important, and what is it really? Then we'll be walking you through a brand new feature that we just introduced called LLM as a Judge as part of our model evaluation suite. Then Hardik will come up and give you a demo of how that actually works in our console. Then talk about the next thing, which is RAG, so retrieval augmented generation. What are the challenges with that? And then how do you go about evaluating that? And Shailendra will come up on stage after I give you an introduction to that to show you how that new feature as well works in our console. And then we'll wrap everything up and go on to the next steps and show you how you can get started immediately. All right. Big picture though, let's start with this first. What is evaluation? It's really like these three things, this big trade-off that you really want to make as a business between the quality of your Gen AI app, the latency, and how much it's going to cost you to run it. And all the time we're hearing from customers about all the different details about how to make these trade-offs and what's most important to their business. And why is it really important at a more granular level? Of course, you have to make that triangle trade-off that we just showed, but really there's more to it. Especially if you dive into the quality part. It's really how do you align your application and all that content to your company's style and your brand voice? How do you evaluate these things with your specific use case and not just some generic cases that are out there? You have to use your own company's data to do this because somebody else's data is going to be irrelevant for you. You really need to make sure it works for your information and your data to help your users and your customers. And then, of course, you want to make sure that these things are reliable and trustable. There's responsible AI things you have to abide by, and these things are really important. But there's a lot of challenges to this, right? Like, we like to think of evaluation kind of as a life cycle. And if you're doing this all on your own, it can be really difficult. First, you've got to find this model hub. Then you've got to figure out like which metrics and algorithms are really important to you. And sometimes that can take like a whole data science team, and there's a lot of discussions, and it can take a long time to just figure out what's relevant to you. Then you've got to find your data sets, right? Like there's a lot of open data sets on the internet, but really you also got to figure out how to make your own data sets with your data. Then you've got to spin up your infrastructure too. You got to be able to host your models somewhere, you got to host your applications somewhere. That can be time consuming and really draw a lot of resources to figure out how to do that the right way. Then when you've done your maybe first pass of automatic type evaluation, you've got to get your human in the loop for human review and human judgment to make sure that these things are actually behaving really the way you want them to. Then of course, after you compile all those things together, you've got to synthesize and really understand, like, is this evaluation result what I wanted? Do I need to go back and iterate? How do we do here? Then you go back and weigh the trade-offs. Go all the way back to that triangle from the very beginning. Your cost, your latency, and your quality. But you can see, this is really kind of a painful thing to do, right? It can take weeks. You have to repeat this for new apps, new models. If you're loading new data into your system, this is really, really painful. So how can we help you get rid of this pain? The first thing that I want to talk to you about today is Amazon Bedrock Model Evaluation. If you were here last year at reInvent, you may remember that we talked about model evaluation in its very beginnings, and we have done a lot of work over the past year to bring new features, new capabilities, new technology to model evaluation to help you get started quickly. Model evaluation, you can use curated data sets that we provide, or you can bring your own data set to make this evaluation really relevant for you. There's several different ways to do model evaluation. You can use automatic evaluation, which comes in two different flavors. There's algorithmic, programmatic, like F1 score and BERT score and other exact string matching techniques. But now, this year, we also have LLM as a judge, which we'll spend a lot more time on in a coming few minutes. The third thing is if you're choosing to do a human review, we have a whole suite of capabilities for human-based evaluation. You can either leverage your own work team for this, or you can work with us. We have an expert AWS managed, fully managed experience that's a private engagement that we can help you do your evaluations too. We have a lot of predefined built-in metrics in our evaluation systems, but we also have custom metrics, especially if you're doing the human evaluation, you really want to get fine-grained with your evaluation for something that's very specific to you. You can totally do that. And we set these things up to be really easy to run. You can get results in just a few clicks in most cases. Now, you take that really big cycle of pain that can take weeks or months, and you turn it into a cycle of productivity that doesn't take very long and only a few clicks. Now, how do you actually get started? Your input format, if you're going to go and use our APIs or you're going to go into the console, you have three things in your format. You've got an input prompt, you've got an optional category, and that helps you kind of sort through your data and understand the results better if you've got different use cases inside your data set. And then the third thing, in a lot of cases, even a ground truth response is optional. So those are it. It's a JSON-L file in your S3 bucket, and Hardik will show you how to do this here in a few minutes. Now let's come back into how does model evaluation actually work. You've got three big choices here. What we've launched already that's already generally available is our programmatic evaluation using things like BERT score and F1 and other exact string matching. You can get accuracy, robustness, and toxicity. We've already launched human-based evaluation where you can do basically anything under the sun if you really want. You just have to write the grading rubrics for your evaluators or work with us in our expert AWS managed team. You can do things like thumbs up, thumbs down rating, like the very simple stuff. You can do Likert scales, preference ranking. And then the big new thing that we're going to really spend time on is LLM as a judge. And we've done a lot of background work with our science team to make sure that these judge models and the judge prompt templates have really good correlation with human annotators at the expert level as well. So you can do things like correctness, completeness, readability, coherence, and many more. All right, as promised, let's dive into this LLM as a judge. We announced this on Sunday of this week, and we're hearing a lot of really good feedback about this already. There's a lot of excitement about it. So, what are our metrics? Let's start with our first 9. These are our quality metrics. We're dividing this into kind of quality and responsible AI. Quality metrics range from like very objective things like correctness and completeness. You have faithfulness, helpfulness, and coherence, all the way down to like more subjective things like readability or professional style and tone. Then you have your responsible AI metrics, harmfulness, stereotyping, answer refusal. So you're really being able to build up a level of this is good, my application is actually behaving well and my model is giving me the right responses, and also they're trustworthy. They're abiding by responsible AI principles. Now let's dive in a little bit more about how these metrics work. Let's take correctness for an example. I'll give you kind of a simplified version of this. Let's say your input data set, you've got, what's the capital of Spain? That's your prompt. We know the answer is Madrid. Let's say the model response gives you Barcelona. Okay, well, how would this actually get evaluated by an LLM as a judge? Okay, let's take a look at this judge prompt. You're a helpful assistant. Classic. Okay, then you're given a question, a candidate response from an LLM, and a reference response. Your task is to check if this response is accurate. Now, for correctness, we have an option. You can either do ground truth or no ground truth, and we'll automatically adjust in the background. Then, here's the actual task. The question, reference response, candidate response. And we basically inject what is from your data set, your prompt, and we pull that in to the judge prompt with the inference that you got from your generator model. So all these things come together. Now, how does it score? Explain your response, followed by your evaluation. Give the score. 2 for correct, 1 for partially correct, 0 for incorrect. This really important point here is explain your response. We're actually telling the judge model to tell us why it got the score that it did. And you'll see this in the demos. It's actually super helpful to understand why. It's not just a number you get out. There's a number and an explanation. So you can actually use the evaluation results to go do something, to make your system better if you don't like the way it's behaving now. Okay. How do you set this up? Hardik is going to walk you through this in more detail. Choose your generator model. Choose your evaluator model, your judge model. Choose what metrics you want from that list. Upload your data set. This will be your JSON-L file from S3. Click Create. We'll do the inference, the scoring, all the computing for you, and we'll display all those results on the screen. And your output file, full with all of your explanations and your numerical scores, will all be loaded to your S3 bucket that you chose in the setup as well. And you can get results in just a few clicks. Now, zooming back out a little bit, we've got our three main types of evaluation. Human evaluation on the left, you can see your distribution of scores from your teams. Automatic evaluation or programmatic evaluation on the right, which was already GA as well. And you've got the scores from like BERT and F1 and all these things, and those you get your simple numerical scores. Then your LM is a judge report where you can dive really, really deep. You see your distributions, you can check prompt by prompt on what these numbers really mean and go into the natural language explanations. Zooming back out even more, we talked about that trade-off between quality, cost, and latency. You can get cost and latency estimations from the Bedrock Playground, already available. Just go to the console, you can log in. Then you get your quality metrics from things like LLM as a judge, from human evaluation, from these programmatic evaluation tools. And there you can do that full assessment, that full triangle with quality, cost, and latency, all here on Amazon Bedrock. Now I'm going to pass this off to Hardik. Hardik will come on stage and give you a demo of how this is going to work.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. So, as Jesse mentioned, you can now use LLM as a judge to evaluate or to leverage large language models to evaluate other models. I've spoken to a lot of organizations that has developed a lot of cool generative AI applications in proof of concept stages. But when they run into model evaluation, that's a bottleneck. With leaner teams that doesn't have a dedicated data scientist, this becomes even larger challenge to understand which model is the right model, which model configurations should we go with, as well as how do we iterate over these evaluations. So let me show you a quick demo to address these challenges that Jesse was talking about. All right, I'm at the Amazon Bedrock landing page. And you can see here all of the capabilities and features of Amazon Bedrock. I'm going to navigate to the evaluations page now. And starting this week, you would see two new features that we just discussed, the LLM as a judge and knowledge base evaluation. So what I'm going to do is I'll start by quickly creating an evaluation job. So I click Create, and I select Automatic Model as a Judge option here. And this brings me to the model evaluation creation page. So I start by quickly typing in the model name. Optionally, I can also provide a description for my evaluation job. And then next, I get to select the evaluator model. The evaluator model evaluates the responses and generates metrics. So I'm going to go ahead and select Claude 3.5 Sonnet as my evaluator model. I'll click Apply. Below that, I see tags, so I can apply tags to my evaluation job, and these are key value pairs. This is an optional field, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this for the purpose of this demo. Next, I select a generator model. A generator model is the model that generates responses. So in this demo, I'm going to select Anthropic Claude 3 Haiku model. and I'll click apply. And then now I get to select the inference configuration. And so for the model that I selected, I can select what is the temperature, top P, top K, as well as the maximum length of my response. I like the settings that they are, so I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to scroll down, and I see metrics here. There are two types of metrics available to me, and I'm not sure why it is doing this. All right. So there's quality metrics, and then there is responsible AI metrics. And there are a lot of options available for both of those. So I'm going to select completeness, relevance, coherence, and correctness as my quality metrics, because I care about these metrics for my given use case. And under responsible AI, I'm going to select the harmfulness, refusal, and stereotype as my metrics. Next, in dataset, I have to provide two files. I'm going to start with the dataset file, which is located in one of my Amazon S3 bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and select that file. It's a JSON-L file, the structure that you just saw. I'm going to click choose, and then I'm going to show you what that file looks like. So I have a very stripped down version of the JSON-L file that only contains one prompt. So as you can see, this file has a JSON object with two entities. There's a prompt, and then there is a reference response. So let's go back to the console and fill up the rest of the information. Next, I'm going to select a location in my Amazon S3 bucket where I want the results to be ingested once the evaluation job completes. So I'm selecting the same bucket. I'm just selecting an output folder, and that is it. Next, I'll select the IAM role. An IAM role is required for you to perform certain actions within the evaluation. So IAM role would have permissions for your Amazon S3 bucket as well as the models that you are leveraging in this evaluation job. I'm going to go ahead and quickly create a new role. I could optionally also select an existing role. And then down here, you can see the KMS key. I can optionally provide my AWS managed KMS key. By default, it will always leverage the AWS managed KMS key. So I can leave it as it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and click create. Now, as soon as I create this job, you can see the status of this job is now in progress. But I've already created some evaluation jobs in my AWS environment. So let me go ahead and click one of those jobs and show you the results. So I'm going to select model eval dataset 1. And I come on the screen, and I'm seeing evaluation summary on the top. If you have to be reminded of what were the evaluation configurations, I would just expand the evaluation summary. And it gives me all of my configurations, including my dataset location, the output location, the models that I have selected, and so on. Next, I see the model summary. And here I am seeing all of the metrics that are evaluated as part of this job. For example, I'm seeing 1.0 for correctness, which means that my responses were correct and accurate. Down below in the responsible AI metrics, I'm seeing harmfulness score to be 0, which means the responses were not harmful in nature. They did not contain any insult or hate. As I scroll below, I'm seeing all of the metrics that were evaluated as part of this job. And I'm going to take an example of one of these metrics. Let's look at helpfulness here. So you have the distribution score for helpfulness metrics. I can see that it received the score of 0.83 over 11 prompts or 11 data points. And just below that, I see prompt details. If I expand prompt details, I would see information on every single prompt that was part of this job, as well as the model generated output and the ground truth that I provided. Towards the right, I see the score for each of the prompt. For the first prompt, I see the score of 0.83. Now I want to understand why did it give the score. So I click on that score, and it gives me a natural language explanation of why did it come to that specific score, right? And without you reading into the entire response, you can see that this response was accurate, it was concise, it performed the task that it had to in answering this question, but the response was slightly generic in nature. And so it was not a perfect one. Similarly, I see the distribution score for every single metrics that were evaluated. And I can get the distribution score information here. All right, I'm going to go back to the evaluations page. And I have these different evaluations, right? But how do I make sense of all of this? How do I compare which evaluation fared well? I can just use the compare feature here on the AWS console. So I'm going to select two random evaluations. So let me go ahead and select eval 1 and eval 3. And I'll just click on this button that says compare. And it has generated a nice spider chart for you here on the console. And this clearly shows the difference between the two evaluations. Now, in my evaluations, I've changed the model configuration, I've updated my prompts. And as you can see here, the readability, the correctness, as well as the coherence for model eval 1 was better than eval 3. I can click on the evaluation details, and that would give me a breakdown of each and every evaluation metrics and a side-by-side comparison for the two evaluation jobs. This gives me a very clear picture of not just the data within and metrics within those evaluation jobs, but now I can continue to iterate over my data and perform additional evaluations. And that is the point that I wanted to reiterate. When you work with your data, this is not a one and done job. You have to constantly iterate over your data and perform evaluations as you go and add additional information. And this will give you additional confidence in productionalizing your generative AI applications. I would encourage you all to try this out today, and I'm hoping that this will help you with your AI adoptions. Thank you, and over to you, Jesse.
A really nice demo. You saw a ton of features there, all like nice new stuff. You can compare results across jobs. You can really get deep into the details of why evaluation results were the way they were. You can do all kinds of things and look at all the different models that we have on Amazon Bedrock to help you get started. So let's recap before we turn on to our next subject. All model evaluation, 4 different types. We've got human evaluation, where you can bring your own work team. You've got a fully managed AWS service that can help you do an evaluation. We've got programmatic evaluations with BERT score and F1 and other traditional NLP metrics. And we've got an LLM as a judge technology that can really help you get started with natural language explanations, easy to understand scores, and really human-like evaluation. You can bring your own data sets, or you can use our curated data sets for the programmatic evaluations. You can use your own metrics for human evaluation, or you can use our curated metrics in LM as a judge, as you just saw. And you can compare across jobs. And all of this is native to Amazon Bedrock. So you don't have to spend time setting up infrastructure, setting up different code bases, and connecting different things together. Now, you want to use these models to build a full app. Maybe it's a RAG application. Maybe it's a customer service chatbot. So as soon as you're getting started with that, the first question you think is, OK, I've built my stuff, but is it any good? How do I know if this content that's coming out of my application is actually going to meet my needs for my users? So let me introduce to you RAG evaluation with Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases. Also brand new this week in preview. But let's zoom out a little bit. What is RAG? It's retrieval augmented generation. You can kind of think of it, and maybe this doesn't really do great justice to what RAG really is and all the different types of RAG that are out there, but LLM-powered search and answer generation. Kinda. Really, it's augmenting your input prompt with information that you've retrieved from some knowledge source. That's another simple way to think about it. When is it useful? It's useful if you have proprietary data that's not in your model training. It's also useful if you want to use data that's maybe created after the training cutoff date of your models that you're using. So you can really inject more relevant, useful, and timely data into your system. But it can also help you reduce hallucinations because you're using real facts that are grounded in your knowledge base to put them in the prompt so your models can actually generate information based on these facts and data that are in your knowledge bases. OK, let's take a look under the hood. How does the data ingestion and data preparation process work for Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases? This is the very simple view, of course. But first, as a user, you input your data. Let's say it's a bunch of PDF documents of user manuals or something that you want to do. And we'll show you a demo here in a minute where all the documentation is actually Bedrock documentation in large PDFs. Then, as soon as you input that data, there's a parser and a chunker that will split all those content into different chunks. Then there's a whole strategy behind that you can choose as well in Bedrock knowledge bases, so you can play with those settings and discover what's right for you. After the chunking happens, those chunks get converted into vector embeddings, numerical representation for all of those text data. Then those embeddings, those vectors are stored in a vector database. And Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases offers several different vector database choices for you to use. Now let's look at what happens during runtime. So now you've got your data ingested, it's all vectorized, it's stored in your vector DB. But what's happening behind the scenes if I make an actual call? So as a user, my first step is I'm going to submit a prompt to my application. Maybe it's a question about a documentation. That prompt gets turned into an embedding vector. Same engine that does the embedding. Then there's a search that happens in my vector DB. I've got a whole bunch of vectors that are embedding from text from my chunks all the way back to my source data, right? All those PDFs that I've loaded in. Now there's a matching that will happen between what I just asked and all the information that's in there, and maybe the top 3 to 5 and however many you choose will get returned based on the relevance and matching of those vectors. Then that content will get augmented into your prompt that you submitted in the first place. You're adding additional context into your prompt to make sure it's grounded with facts. Then, using all that information in your prompt, you're generating the final response with your generator LLM. After all of this, how do you get the information back? Two main things you get back. One is you get your retrieval information back. So all those context, all those chunks that were retrieved, they can come back to you as a user. And as well, the final generated response from the generator LLM will come back to you as a user. It sounds great, but there's some real challenges with evaluating these systems. You got to make sure your data is relevant in your knowledge base, and you got to make sure you're retrieving the right data from your knowledge base during this retrieval process and embedding process. There's a lot of settings to make sure that are correct and tweaked and tuned to make sure that you're actually fetching the right data from your vector DB. That actually starts with choosing how to do ingestion properly, all the way through the retrieval process, whether it's semantic search or another type of search. Then, after you've retrieved, then you go on to generate a correct and complete and limited hallucination answer if you're doing the full RAG end-to-end cycle. Then, of course, you want to be able to say, OK, well, I've got retrieved context. Now I've got a generated answer. Is this what I want? And if it's not what I want in terms of quality or responsible AI, how do I iteratively improve on that entire life cycle from ingestion all the way to generation of a response from your LLM? And of course, you want to do this by evaluating your quality but you cannot forget about your bias, your trust, your safety, your responsible AI elements. Now, to help you do all of these, let me show you a little bit more about RAG evaluation with Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases. First, you've got to make sure that your evaluation is relevant for you. So you're bringing your data set here, and we'll show you how to do this in a little bit. You can evaluate retrieval by itself with the Retrieve API, and we'll call that for you in the background. This is Amazon Bedrock Knowledge Base's native Retrieve API. Or you can use Retrieve and Generate evaluations, and it's all powered by LLM as a judge. Same technology that we just talked about in model evaluation is powering this RAG evaluation as well. So you get those natural language explanations, you get a human-like understanding of how this works. We've got built-in metrics that I'll tell you in just a second for quality and responsible AI. It's also, importantly, compatible with Bedrock guardrails. So if you have Bedrock guardrails already set up in your account, you can attach those to these RAG evaluation jobs with knowledge bases. And of course, like Hardik just showed you, the comparing across multiple jobs, that still applies here in RAG evaluation. So you can really see all these changes that you're doing in your entire RAG pipeline. Are they making a difference? Are they good? Are you going in the right direction to make sure that your RAG application is going to give you the results that you want? And of course, we try to do this as simply as possible so you can get results in just a few clicks. Okay, more details here. How do you actually get started? Now we have this JSON block up on the screen, but really there's two big things that are important. One is you have your input prompt, and the other is you have your reference response. In some cases, you don't need a reference response, and we'll go through those in a second. But those are the two big things. You've got your prompt, and you've got your reference response. Again, these are in a JSON-L format in your S3 bucket, and we'll pull those into the job for you as you select. Now let's get into the metrics. We talked about how you can do retrieval separately from the rest. For retrieval, we've got context coverage, and we've got context relevance. If you've used other tools in the past, kind of roughly similar to context precision and recall. Retrieval and generation, if you're doing your end-to-end retrieve and generate API on Bedrock knowledge bases, we help you with that too. You got correctness, completeness, helpfulness, logical coherence, and faithfulness for those quality metrics for your end-to-end generation. And of course, you cannot forget about responsible AI. Same three metrics that we offer for LM as a judge and model eval, we have them here too. Answer refusal, harmfulness, stereotyping. Okay, now how do these actually work? Before, we showed you this judge prompt template. Now there's a little bit more information that's flying around, right? You've got retrieve context. So let me give you a refresher. For example, you've got this prompt template that's how the judge actually works, and we're injecting information in there. So this is just the same example from correctness before. But now you can imagine there's a lot of other things now. You've got retrieve context. And now you've got other metrics. You've got context relevance. You've got context coverage. So let's go through these one by one. In almost all cases, the original prompt will feed into the judge prompt as well. The only one, I believe, that doesn't do that is for faithfulness. Then, logical coherence, harmfulness, stereotyping, and refusal, you only need the ground truth response and your input prompt. For faithfulness and helpfulness, it'll take in your response, the response from your system for retrieve and generate, and also the retrieve context. For retrieve context, so for context relevance, you only need the retrieve context and your prompt, of course. And then context coverage, you have your ground truth answer and you have your retrieve context. Correctness and completeness, your ground truth is actually optional. We have versions of this in the background. We'll automatically route to the right thing if you bring a ground truth or you don't bring a ground truth. So back to this prompt template. All these prompt templates, these are not secret. We're being very transparent. They're in the AWS documentation in full form to show you exactly what the inputs are, so you can trust that the evaluation is the high quality that you want, so you can understand where the scores come from and get an even more detailed view on where your scores mean. All right, how do you set this up? Very similar walkthrough for the LLM as a judge that we just showed. One, what I'm going to show you first is the full end-to-end retrieve and generate, and I'll explain where they split a little bit. First is you got to choose your judge model, your evaluator model. That's like very near the top. Then you choose your knowledge base. Again, integrated directly with Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases. Then choose, do you want retrieve or do you want retrieve and generate? And that's, if you are doing retrieve only, You don't need a generator model also, but if you do decide to do a retrieve and generate job, then you can choose your generator model, choose your metrics from all those that we just talked about, upload your prompt data set from your S3 bucket in that JSON-L format, then click Create. We'll do that inference and evaluation for you. We'll compile all the scores and put it on your report card that Shailendra will show you here in just a minute. Then you get to view those results. It really is just a few clicks. It's minutes, less. If you've done this more than once and you're iterating, you get very familiar very quickly and you can really set them up pretty fast. You get simple to read scores, natural language explanations within these scores. You can see all the distributions from the lowest score to the highest score, and you get transparency. All right, now it's time for me to invite Shailendra up, and he will take you through the demo of RAG evaluation.
Hello everyone, my name is Shailendra Chabra. I'm a senior manager in product management in Amazon Bedrock, and today I'm here to show you a demo of RAG evaluation for your knowledge bases that Jesse just talked about. So here we are in the Bedrock console, and on the left nav, you will see under inference and assessment, we have, previously it used to be called model evaluation, but we're being more comprehensive. And you will see on the left nav, under inference and assessment, you will see evaluations. So you click on here, and you will see a new tab for knowledge bases. I click on here, you see a description of how it works. Like Jesse mentioned, we're using the same LLM as a judge technology to power through this knowledge-based evaluation. Now here, you can see some jobs that have already completed, and this page reflects the status of all of your jobs. So these jobs were run before, we have completed them, and I can quickly go click through each of these jobs. But what we want to show here right now is how to set up a new job. So I create a new job, it's reinvent demo. I can put a description of this job, maximum 150 characters. And then you have to select an evaluator model. And Bedrock is all about choice to give you the right tools. So here you will see we have 4 options for you to select from for your judge. So here I'm going to take Llama 3.1 7dB instruct as a judge for no good reason, just because I like it. I'll take that model as a judge. And then quickly here, I can select a knowledge base. Now this is the knowledge base that's from Bedrock. It's all integrated. You don't have to go plug in something new. And in this scenario, we'll see, I'll be asking some questions about Bedrock. And it uses all the documentation that's already published on Bedrock as a demo example. Now there are 2 types of jobs, retrieve and generate, as Jesse explained in his presentation. So I'll select this knowledge base, which is a PDF of the documentation. I'm selecting the retrieval only job, but let us also look at some other configurations that I can select when selecting this job. We'll show you in detail for all the different configurations and parameters that you can set up. I personally like to choose, use a lot of select default choices. So very quickly here, we'll show you some configurations. Click on here, the search type. You can override the default search. You can select hybrid search or semantic search. But for this demo, we're going to just select the default. You can also change the chunks. It's a number between 1 to 100. I like to use 5, split in chunks of 5. There's also some controls for you in the filters for the metadata, but for the purpose of this demo, we'll keep it simple. Now let's look at some metrics as well. Now here there are quality metrics for retrieval, context relevance, which is similar to precision, how relevant were the results that came out, and context coverage, which is similar to recall. It's a measure of how much was the retrieved text overlap with the ground truth. So with that, we'll show you how to set up this job. But before I go and show input and output format, we also want to show you this other job, retrieve and generate, and the various dimensions for metrics that we have in there. So let's quickly show you retrieve and generate here. And we'll show you the quality and responsible AI dimensions that we have created for that. So when you select retrieve and generate, you also have to select a generator model that will be evaluated using the judge you already selected before. So here, we'll select a model. Let's select Haiku, 3.5 Haiku. And then you have to select inference, on demand or cross region. I selected cross region inference. Here, want to leverage some of that capacity and click apply. So then let's look at some of these quality and responsible AI dimensions that we have. But before that, actually, let's click on the configurations again. Now, these configurations are for your generator model as well as your knowledge bases. You can select inference parameters. You can change the source chunks. You can change the temperature. You can change the length. Again, we talked about changing the defaults for the search from your vector embeddings. You can change the number of chunks. I like to keep it at 5, but sometimes I also experiment with 1 or 2 chunks. And then we have pretty advanced ways for the queries to break the complex queries into simple queries, but I'll keep it default in this demo. And also guardrails. We have integration with guardrails. So let's say you have guardrails already set up in Bedrock, and you want to factor that in as part of your RAG evaluation. You can select that and select the version. But for this demo, I'm just showing you here, but for this demo, we will not leverage guardrails. Now let's look at some of these metrics that we have after you selected whatever configuration parameters you wanted. So we have two categories, quality and responsible AI. So here you can see helpfulness, correctness, logical coherence, faithfulness, and completeness metrics. And then on the responsible AI side, we give you metrics for harmfulness, refusal, and stereotyping. These out-of-box, we have talked to a lot of customers who thought that we should ship these out-of-box metrics. So that's what they're here, but you can select, unselect them. So for the purpose of this demo, we'll select a few of these. And then we heard a lot from our customers about, hey, I also want to measure hallucination. How do I do that? So we brought this metric, faithfulness. Some customers also like to call it groundedness. But you have this comprehensive way for various dimensions that you want to evaluate your RAG and knowledge bases on. So once I select this, we'll show you shortly your input data set and output data set. But this view gives you, and in the future, we will bring additional capabilities for you to add your own metric if you like. So with that, we'll be ready to fire off our job here in a second. But we do have to select our input and output data set in the prompts format that Jesse showed you. So let's select faithfulness, correctness, and completeness, and then harmfulness. And let's select input data set and output data set. So I go in here, click on Browse S3, very simple and easy for you to select your input output data set. But you do have to have the prompts in the formats. So here I'll select, let's select the reinvent demo, and then I'll select this file. But let us show you what this file is. Jesse had this on his slide, but it looks like this. So there is a conversation turnkey. There's a reference response, which is the ground truth. Now, this is all coming from Bedrock documentation that already exists. You can go and verify. So that's the answer I'm expecting when the prompt is, what is Amazon Bedrock? So here you see a ground truth response. Bedrock is a fully managed service that gives you access to foundation models, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the prompt. So when I feed this and want to see the results of the generator model, I have a ground truth to compare to. I know what the 100% correct answer looks like. So we selected input and output format. I think we're ready to start our job. And so with this, the job is created. Now, once the job is created, you can go back to the same page where you see different jobs that are listed. And then in the next step, I would like to show you, once the job is created and completed, how you will see the results. So we're still selecting the job here, selecting the output, and boom. There are options like KMS. You can set different KMS, but here we'll leave this for default. There are IAM roles options. You can create a new service role, but in this job, I have an existing role that I would like to use. And really, all the bells and whistles for you to control the job the way you want. And there we go. So use an existing service role, select this role, and click Create. Boom. So the job will be completed in a few minutes. You will come back to the same page where you'll see the status of different jobs. And now let's dive in and see how does the result look like once a job is completed. So we'll click on this default job, and at a glance, you will see we give you a score for the metrics you selected. So correctness is 0.95, completeness 0.75, faithfulness 0.83, pretty good. And responsible AI harmfulness metric that you chose, it's 0. So this is a pretty good information for me at a glance. And you can also select, double check, try to remember what configurations you had. So you had number of turns 10, what the job was, what the generator model was. If you forget, you can always click and see these configuration parameters. But what if I want to drill down deeper? What if it's great to have this number, but I do want to see a distribution. So down below here, we give you a very graphical representation, including different cohorts, different groups. You can see there are 4 groups here of prompts and responses. And let's take a look at one of these. Hey, this prompt had a response that ranged from 0.45 and 0.55. Let's see what's going on. Why is it, in the middle? So you can go in, click here, and you can see the scenario that the prompt was, what are some common tasks supported by Bedrock LLMs? We did have a ground truth for it that the judge used to evaluate the response of the generator model. And we can see here that it used 5 retrieved sources, and it gave a score of 0.5. But I'm really curious, why is 0.5 when the range is from 0 to 1? So you can see the output was, hey, common tasks supported by LLMs on Bedrock include classification, question answering, both with and without context, summarization, and open-ended text. But if you look at this ground truth, you can see, as a human, I can see that it also had some other information like code generation, math reasoning, logical thinking, entity extraction, and chain of thought reasoning that is not present in my generation output. So you drill down more, and this will give you, the judge is giving you an explanation in a natural language form, explaining what I just explained to you as a human, that, hey, the candidate response basically covers some tasks, but if you look at the latter half of this, it misses other crucial tasks, such as code generation, math, reasoning, logical thinking, entity extraction, and chain of thought reasoning. And it does cover half of that. That's why it gave the score 0.5. Now, I think that we have a ground truth, which has all the answers here, and it used 5 retrieved sources. It make me think that it may be a issue with retrieval. So I can go back and experiment with, changing the chunk size. Maybe I need to add another another source for that. But it does give me some insight into why it's saying, what the score is, what it is, and what I can do to make it better. So that was just drill down of specific prompt response, but you can do this for all the distributions you see. And now, if you want to see another you can see harmfulness. The score is 0. None of the prompt responses were really harmful or toxic. So I think this is good for me. So what we just saw was, a detailed information for one of the results for the job I did. Now I'm running many jobs. I'm experimenting with different models. And what if I want to compare? And so same thing as you saw in with model evaluation using LLM as a judge. But here we also allow you to do comparison. So here you go back to that page. You select 2 jobs. Let's select the default one, custom one. As soon as you select 2 jobs, this compare button becomes active. And then here you see the Spidey chart at a glance. I can see the distribution here for the different dimensions I had for these 2 jobs selected, correctness, completeness, and harmfulness. But I have to remember what configuration these were. So I can click on this and see both jobs and their configurations. You can see the temperature I had for was 0.70. This one had the chunking size 5, but the other job, the custom one, I think the temperature was a little lower, 0.3, and the chunking size was also 1. So I can remind myself, as I set these jobs, and I'm beginning to compare, but what were the parameters I had for them in the first place? Once I do that, I'm going to now look at the Spidey chart and see. So for example, the default one has a higher correctness score. But I also remember temperature was higher and chunking size was higher. So, it's kind of making sense to me that why it's like higher on the correctness dimension compared to the custom one. Same thing for completeness. It had higher, more chunks. And again, this is a lot of experimentation here. But the results that are coming up where I'm seeing the default one has a higher score than the custom one is making sense to me. And so you can see the score 0.95 versus 0.85 for default versus custom. Completeness is more complete in the default one, higher chunk size, 0.75 versus 0.68. And then for faithfulness, again, 0.83 versus 0.78. And then we'll see quickly here that both are 0, on the harmlessness dimension, which also makes sense because I didn't see anything in the prompt responses that I thought would be harmful. So here you saw this very quickly, in a Spidey chart. But what if I am more curious? What if I want to drill down on this further? We already showed you a detailed distribution page for individual results. So you click on here, on this tab, evaluation details. Now you can do side-by-side comparison for the two jobs that you were just looking at a glance. You can see how, what prompt responses are different ranges for each of these two jobs. So it's basically giving me a lot of information that I would have otherwise, if I didn't have this feature, would have to do manually or using different tools. But it's all in one place for you. You want to look at a glance, you see the Spidey chart, you want to drill down, and you want to do comparison, side-by-side comparison, you come in here. And there we have it. Our goal is to take all the undifferentiated heavy lifting, add some innovations, and bring it all to you. Our science team has done a lot of work while building these metrics. A lot of research has gone into before we expose these options for you. So we hope these demos, these presentations, these new features take the burden out of you so you all can focus on your use cases and build the greatest scenarios and apps possible for your customers. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Jesse. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shailendra. Great demo. So you can see, seeing just a piece of really what you can do here with these tools. And let's recap our RAG eval. Powered by LLM as a judge. You can evaluate retrieval by itself, or you can evaluate the end-to-end RAG, retrieve and generate. You can integrate with Amazon Bedrock guardrails, bring your own data for a more relevant evaluation to you. We've got easy-to-read reports, all normalized scores from 0 to 1. The judge prompt templates are available in the documentation for transparency. You can compare across jobs so you can understand how to iterate to actually make your application useful for you and useful for your users. And all of this is built directly into Amazon Bedrock itself. All right, wrapping the whole session up. Model evaluation, RAG evaluation, LM as a judge, human evaluation, programmatic. Bring your own data sets. We've got built-in data sets for certain things. Human-like evaluation results with an LM as a judge. Really be able to dig in and understand what these results mean. Iterate on your application. Put something out to the world that you can be proud of, that you can trust, that follows responsible AI principles. All of this available in Amazon Bedrock. Get started today. So this is scan our QR code, see our public page, see all the features that we have. Evaluations has its own page. Knowledge Bases has a ton of information on there as well. Reach out to your account managers, reach out to solution architects here. Feel free to talk to us in the back after this. We really are excited and we look forward to seeing what you build now that you have the confidence to go out and evaluate that these things will work well for you. And thank you very much for your time.